us. So thank you very much, of course, Sergio, being our great partner for World Standards Corporation, ISO, and Boris as well representing IEC, and my colleague Cesar, as Director of Standardization of ITU, and I think they will definitely be much better placed to explain how important role standards play in this. And of course, it will be great to hear from some country experiences and development partner experiences how to actually implement this. So from standards to the countries, I think it's really important. So now standards have been like a really important pillar of green digital action from the beginning of green digital action. So we had here, especially on two sides, sustainability by design, making sure that everything that we develop needs to have a green lens, and then of course the standards implementation piece. And here in COP, I think we have a renewed importance for the really strong role of standards. First of all, this COP, two things I hear in this COP when people ask. One thing is the digital is now everywhere. So it's no longer, and we even discussed with the team, we no longer need to do advocacy. We don't no longer need the meetings where we say digital is important, because this is like a preaching to the choir, no longer in this meeting, but like everywhere around the COP. Everyone says digital is important. So now that piece is done. But then another piece which is also important is implementation. And implementation is also, that's a bit difficult for us, because it was very good and great to do all about declarations and pledges, because that's cool, it's politically, it's visible, that sense. And now implementation is difficult, it's like it's going to the countries, working on specific requirements and sharing those requirements and implement it. So it's a bit less glamorous, but that's where the rubber hits the road, that's where actually needs to be done, and that's where the standards matter. Now, also, we've done a lot as a community. We've done on our side on ITU, and of course, Cesar will be more precise about that. We did, for example, on AI assessments, we've done quite a bit of work, on the standard development piece, on dissemination of standards, revision standardization gap, and then even here in COP, including in this pavilion, we recognize the winners of our, I think, AI Innovation Factory yesterday, but also AI Environmental Footprint hackathon. So we not only talk about requirements, we also have companies, entrepreneurs around the world who implement them, show us how to do it, bring it back, and create the feedback loop. However, I still think we need to raise our ambition even higher, and I'm always, in every meeting on this, I'm also this bad guy saying, are we doing enough, So, and I think I remember, that was actually ISO president, like when we were at COP28, and she said very powerfully, said like, look guys, we'll be watching you to deliver. And I think I'll do that on her behalf, actually, Sergio. So I think the world is watching us to deliver. And I think we still need to push forward for really making sure that those standards we develop are really known and implemented, not only by developed countries, but everywhere around the world. And I think here's a good community to speak about how to do it, so that we don't just have great standard suites, but we focus not on just developing the standards, but actually having them making the difference. And I think that's important. And I still think here is more to be done on sustainability by design, on really that green lens. And I know each organization individually does quite a bit on this, and we have guidelines, but really making sure that it's across the board message. And I think that's where I think I'll be one of the people who will say, okay, are we doing enough? So sorry for that. So with that, I think this is a great session to really look into those questions. Why standards matter? What are we doing? How we can do more? So thank you very much for being here, and back to you, Reina, for moderating us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And thank you for challenging us. Now we know that he will be watching us. And now allow me to welcome my panelists for today. We will have a very short chat with Lina Ismail from AFNOR. Please, Lina, come to here. Alfred Bogarer from Uganda Communication Commission, and Soren Giegler from the European Commission. Please, if you can take the floor. Thank you for being with us, and we wanted to have a bit perspective from the countries and also organizations of the European Commission, how standards can help you. So can you tell me how standards are helping your activities right now? Soren, we can start with you.
Thank you. So thank you, first of all, for inviting me. So it's great to be here. I think standards are absolutely critical because they build the foundation. Like the standards are the pillars of the digital transformation. So it's like building a house, and you first have a foundation, which are your standards. If you have there's some houses, right, they're very vulnerable because they have no basement, they have no foundation. So I think that's really critical in the first step. So in many aspects of digital, but I really, because I focus on the digital and green transformation, so I'm sorry already now, so I'll focus specifically on that area. But see, for us, for instance, we were working on the Sustainable Finance Directive, the taxonomy, and there the standards were extremely useful, because we were asked overnight. Actually, we had only a couple of days, so we had to develop an annex, which was very important, on green data centers for financing. So when should data centers be green and eligible for sustainable financing? And so that's where we use the ITU standards and referred them into that policy now, into the official EU's taxonomy. So that's just one of many examples. Then we work a lot on the European Green Digital Coalition. So this is a coalition of 37 tech companies, was signed by CEOs, and it includes companies like Google, Orange, Nokia, Atos, so basically major tech companies. And here again, basically what does the European Green Digital Coalition do? The first is the companies signed a pledge 2 years ago to become carbon neutral by 2040. And it was very rigorous, because we use science-based targets and standards to actually verify to what extent those pledges are reasonable. And believe it or not, there were 50 to 60 companies we had to reject. We said you could not join the coalition because you didn't meet the minimum standards. But standards is key. Let me just use the word. There's so much greenwashing, right? So basically, if there's no clear standards, how do you know what is green and what is not green? And so, and with AI, by the way, these standards become even more important, because a lot of the tech companies already tell us that they will not achieve their carbon neutrality pledges because they hadn't foreseen the AI boom, and so now they are not becoming carbon neutral. So the second, and then we can work very closely with the Green Digital Action Center. So we have actually developed a very rigorous carbon neutral impact assessment methodology to assess the impact of digital programs across sectors. So for instance, and this also driven by the private sector. So if this is now the mainstreaming of digital solutions into sectors such as buildings, smart grids, agriculture, and to what extent is it net zero positive or not? Because the immediate effect we sometimes forget, when you do, for instance, precision farming, and imagine you use drones or you use IoT, the first effect you'll have is a negative impact, because the digital solutions also cause emissions. But then over the longer term, you can become net zero positive. So yeah, so these are some examples how we use standards.
Thank you so much for this clear example. Now, I would like to give the floor to you, Lina. How you are from AFNOR, and how standards are helping also your policy and the country, and maybe at the European level also, that you participate in BEREC, how standards have been supporting you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here with you discussing this very important topic. So basically my role in AFNOR in France is to actually think about the development of standards that matters, standards that match the market needs. And when I say the market needs, it's not only the needs from the private stakeholders, but also the needs from the policymakers also. And what I wanted to share with you today was that I think that the key is the anticipation. When we are able to see to what extent there is some upcoming strategies, some upcoming policies that are preparing at the French scale or at the European scale, as standardizers, we are the best, I would say, because standardization can actually take time, but when it's well designed and designed in advance, I think that's where we have the most important impact with standards that are really developed to support the implementation of national policies. I have one or two examples to share with you. It was kind of difficult. One. Maybe I can talk to you about the third NAP in France, so the National Adaptation Plan. I work really closely and hardly on that, so I'm quite proud of this example. So France issued its third National Adaptation Plan last March. And with the AFNOR teams, we advocated a lot for 1 year before in order to promote standardization as an efficient tool to help the French government to actually develop and implement its national adaptation plan. So the result is the following. The third national adaptation plan in France has 51 measures, and AFNOR with standardization is one of them. So we are mandated by the French government to make the analysis of standards and to see to what extent we could revise standards so that they can actually match the climate change effect by 2050. So it's really important to work really closely with policymakers in advance so that we can position standardization as the really effective tool in order to help businesses to implement the public policies.
Thank you so much, Lina, and thank you for explaining, and congratulations on the work that you do for the NIP. And something that you said about changing the standards, I think it's very important that people know that standards are not set in stone, that because of technology, we need to revise them, and this is okay. And also when you implement them, that this will be a second question as well, you find that there are some things that maybe are not clear, or you find some data. So standards are flexible in this. Alfred, what will be your experience in Uganda?
Thank you so much. And I think before I respond to the standard, I wanted to give a brief background of what we are doing in Uganda, or the challenges really that we have as a country in relation to climate action plan, in relation to climatic changes. The first one, from the policy point of view, we are conflicted. We are conflicted in the sense that we have priority demands, economic priority demands, where policymakers would say, okay, we need to go green. We need to go green. We need to reduce on carbon-intensive industries and sectors. But on the other side of the coin, when we look at it, we say, okay, but we're going to lose jobs, people are going to be jobless. Then from a more practical point of view, Uganda has just discovered oil, which we haven't sold, not even a liter on the market. So when we sit at the policy level and we start discussing green energy at this point, we find ourselves very conflicted in that aspect. But the second challenge we have is we don't have national reliable data and transparent reporting mechanism in Uganda. And that is a big challenge because it's difficult to compare that data within the various sectors in the country, but also globally with those outside. And I think that is where standards play a critical role in that aspect. I know my colleagues have spoken about specific sector standards or specific industry standards, but from the policy context point of view, for us, we had initially, as part of our action plans and measurement targets, we adopted the SDGs, and they have informed in some way how we develop our policies, how we do our action plans, and how we report on sustainability at the policy level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alfred. And apologies that I will need to rush a bit because we started late and there are other commitments. But then in short, if you can let us know, we talk about the standards that exist, then there was the challenge that Uganda has. How can we make, what will be your suggestion, how can we make these standards implementable? Because one is things about implementation, and the DSG also mentioned, okay, first we talk about what will be our commitments, but how do we make this commitment real? How do you see we can implement these standards? In very short, if you can, 1 minute, tell us a big question. Thank you.
Well, we work a lot with our partner countries in Africa or Latin America and Asia. So I would say the one biggest issue is institutional strengthening and capacity building. So it's one issue to have the standard, but then actually for governments, yeah, like yourself and others, but I'm sure you have the same issue within Uganda with the other ministries. So basically we work together with ITU and World Bank on this green data guidelines. I know it's not a standard, but it's also a guidelines. But then the World Bank says that they influenced $1.2 billion of investments, meaning actually in Uganda, yeah, the government now is building supposedly, I don't know, a green data center, and the World Bank was using these guidelines to discuss with the government of Uganda what does green actually mean. And they need a standard, because every country otherwise will define, many countries say, we use renewable energy, so all our data centers are green. Well, sorry, that's not true. So, you know, there's cooling systems, there's the building, there's so much more than only renewable energy to make a data center green.
Is in just a few words, I would say that in order to make standard the most implementable possible, we need to write them with the people of the field directly, people who will be impacted by the standards that we were developing. And from my perspective, what I see also is to show some examples of, for example, some companies that are actually implementing some standards in order to inspire others company. When we are able to broadcast nice examples of one company showing how to do it, I think it can help the market more. And the third thing is to actually raise awareness and to show also that if you implement the standards, you will have some opportunities. Opportunity for more sustainable development, opportunity for more responsibility when you're doing your business. So yes, I think it will be 3 challenges that we need to tackle.
Thank you, Lina.
All right, thank you so much. I want to build on my European colleague. Capacity building is very important because at ITU level, we talk a lot about standardization gap, especially for developing countries. Yeah, and I think that is very critical, because if the developing countries are to embrace, adopt, and implement the standards, they have to be part of that process. And that calls for inclusivity of everybody, academia, industry, stakeholders. Everybody's voice must be heard in the development stage of the standards themselves, not standards that are developed in area X and now they want to implement them in area B. There would be resistance in some instances. That's what I think. Secondly, I think we have to adopt localized relevance of the standards, because I would assume that, or I would believe, as we have seen it before, that the standards may not really cut across the globe. So we need to have a mechanism to adapt standards to the local context, to the regional context, so that people do not resist standards if they directly speak or are responsive to their own challenges within that geographical space. And the third one is equitable access. So we should make sure that information and participation of everyone is very important. Share information broadly on climate change, impact, and so on. Everybody should have access to that information and use that information really to drive policy, to drive laws, and everything that countries need to put in place to be able to achieve sustainability, but also drive the climate action plans or activities that we all strive to drive. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the three of you. Now we have, I think, well, you have the CEOs here. They have heard you. So how we can do more capacity building, also more testing before the standards is out. I think pilot projects are very much needed, and we are starting working on that, because then when you are piloting the standard, it's where you see where the gaps are. Thank you, and now we will welcome our three CEOs here. And thank you. We can do it. Thank you for having here Sergio Mujica, Secretary General from the International Standardization Organization, ISO. Boris. Sorry, Boris. Yeah. From IEC, and Mr. Seiso Onoe, Director from the Telecommunications Standardization Bureau. So thank you so much for being here. And now I would like you to give us some context on what have been the effort that you have been doing as the World Standards Collaboration. We started with a statement in COP28 about sustainability by design, but we know that there are also some other efforts that you are doing. So if you can provide us with more information, thank you.
Thank you. Well, ISO, IC, and ITU, we've been collaborating together for around 30 years, which is the same time as we had having COP30. And the key question is why? We're so different, intergovernmental, non-governmental, standards for free, for sale. But what is the glue that connects our three organizations? First of all, it's a wide membership base. In the case of ISO, we have more than 170 countries that participate in our organization. But second, and perhaps even more importantly, is the values or the principles we believe in for us to develop standards. So it's not about expert knowledge only, because we do have that expert knowledge. It's also about the due process, what we believe in. So first of all, consensus building. We do not impose our views. We try to reach consensus. Then inclusivity. We invite everyone to the table, even those who disagree with us. Transparency. And a very important element of capacity building, proactively enabling the participation from developing countries. That I think addressed one of the questions that were made before. So that in general. Then on the how, I think there's been quite an evolution here from pure advocacy activities to advocacy with intention, I would say, and then from pure collaboration to more coordination and even co-creation activities. So advocacy, we have now dedicated the World Standard Day that we all celebrate on the 14th of October to sustainability activities, and in particular to the support of the implementation of the SDGs. Then we have co-created this Standards Pavilion, as well as the AI Summit that we will have in Seoul in less than a month's time. And then in the part of co-creation, we are all member-based organization. That means that there is an idea over there, then it follows a process, and we create a new standard. And there is a big risk, even with the best of our intentions, there is a big risk of fragmentation, duplication, overlapping. So how do we coordinate for real this effort? And we have established an infrastructure. It's called the SPCG, Standard Program Coordination Group, where we put together the governance of the three organizations and we decide what is the best way to move forward together without creating confusion, rather creating clarity to the world. And one additional clear example is what we did 2 years ago with this sustainability by design. We need to make sure that our standard capture the sustainability angle. The journey does not finish, and this is my key final message, the journey does not finish when we publish the standards. That is just the beginning, because we are trying to create impact here, and the impact will only happen when those standards are implemented. So we need to do more together to support the implementation of our standards.
Thank you. You can continue more, but I don't. Okay. Actually, I'd like to start by talking from the context of the bridging the Standard Gap. Actually, the WSC COP29 commitment stressed the need to the cross the digital divide and the role of the international standardization in improving the global access to developing countries. The WSC provides a trusted platform for digital cooperation, enabling developing countries to make full use of the digital sustainable solutions. And I want to take some point of the fundamental point. WSC brings together with cover the different areas in each organization, but complementary. And that allows us cover the wide area. So, but sometimes it's overlap. Then, as Sergio said, we have a concrete coordination framework mechanisms through the practical coordination by SPCG. And also some areas we promote joint work in areas like multimedia coding. We have such area. And also, I believe that that coordination will also strengthen our respective capacity building efforts, including bridging the Standard Gap. And different point, just one recent example of our joint effort is the AI Standards Exchange database. This is not just for the bridging the Standard Gap, but the AI is now very key technology for sustainability. So it brings together all AI-related standards from ISO, IC, ITU, and other bodies, making the entire landscape more transparent and accessible. This, as I said, this is not originally for the bridging the Standard Gap, but as a result, it improves the access for the developing countries. That helps develop bridging the Standard Gap. And anyway, ITU working on within the such WSC framework. So ITU contributes to standardization work, including AI, environmental impact measurement, and energy consumption data. So, and okay, time limit? Just one thing I want to say that our activities regarding the ITU, yes, just I can mention that just last week, ITU achieved the first stage approval for new standards to measure the life cycle environmental impact of AI. Okay, I will finish. Stop here.
Mr. Honor.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much as well to the ITU for hosting this session and for inviting us to contribute After Sergio has explained the framework of our collaboration and Onoe-san the nature of the project we collaborate, it's my honor to build on that in the short amount of time that we have, and I think really to underline the strength of our collaboration, something that both of you have mentioned is really the complementarity of the area of work that we have with the different standards that we are developing, sometimes jointly, sometimes individually, and to reflect on what we've done over the past COP and what we've done in between. There's so much has been done in the area of renewable energy, so much has been done in the area of energy efficiency, doubling down, tripling up, and that's really where the strength of our standards come into play, and the value then for policymakers to make use of these standards and to implement them in the national context. And I want to pick up something that's been said just in the panel before, which I think is very interesting, is how can we put these standards to test? And it was, I think, you, Alfred, if I remember the name well, with the example from Rwanda, but also the colleague from the European Union. What we have done, and that's been a project for the past 3 years with the IEC Global Impact Fund, we are actually putting our standards to test in the context of 2 concrete projects. We are refurbishing solar panel installation in over 9 sites in rural Kenya, where these installations have already been paid for by funders, by taxpayers, but they've blacked out in anything between 2 months and 2 years. They should be running for 10 years, 20 years, much longer. And what we are showing with the refurbishment is that you can go further with, if you want to have an economical perspective, you can go further with your return on investment if you design these projects with international standards from the outset and in design phase. You also have a bigger impact on society if you use international standard. And obviously, it's international standards from the various organizations that are here, that are represented here, because it's not all about electrification. It's one thing leading to the other. And here again, looping back to the strength of the WSC, the complementarity that we have, and that force ultimately bringing us to a point where, this is the implementation COP, where we can really bring actionables to the ground, and that's the beauty of our collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with this nice conversation, we close this session. And I hope you can join other sessions in the Standards Pavilion and also the Green Digital Action. Thank you so much.